Women should run the world. That's according to new research which found the four most trusted politicians are female.
So we're talking about, of course, Jacinda Ardern, Penny Wong, Julie Bishop and Tanya Plibersek. They took out the top spots in the 2019 Believability Index.
So for more on this, we're joined by Corporate and Public Affairs Specialist Greg Baxter. Good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning.
So does this mean that we trust women more than we trust men?
It's hard to generalise, but I think we do. I think we do. And if you look at the names that you've just read out, I think what we're seeing is a lot of disillusionment with leadership in Canberra over a long period of time. Men have been the architects of all those problems. Men are largely the architects of the problems we're seeing in corporate Australia, in the leadership of other institutions like the church, like aged care, like the way our disability system is functioning.
So the bottom five are men. So we're talking about Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister, Bill Shorten, Tony Abbott, former Prime Minister.
Dutton's on that list, and Clive Palmer, I think, is like the wooden spooner.
Wow, it's just like, it's the worst part, isn't it? So what are guys doing wrong, especially in politics here? What are the men doing wrong?
Well, I think it's they're not demonstrating the things, I guess, the attributes and qualities that are why we trust women. So authenticity, sincerity, empathy. You know, I think women are better at being inclusive and building consensus. They're not as combative. What we're seeing with our male politicians is a lot of combat, a lot of confrontation, personal quest for power, personal agendas. And not surprisingly, people have had enough of it, I think.
Well, with some of those traits that you're talking about, showing empathy and all, I mean, we just saw with Jacinda Ardern after the massacre there, and I mean, she's topped this list, I think, at 77%. She's even worlds ahead of Penny Wong. I mean, do you think any lessons will be learnt by our politicians from this?
Look, I think the fact that she now has a global profile, and I think she had a global profile even before Christchurch, there's an appetite for that leadership style. And, you know, arguably we saw that in Canada as well, a year or two before. And if you look at what's happening in Britain, if you look at what's happening in the United States, I think there is clearly an appetite for an alternative. Now, to what extent we're going to see how big that appetite is in Australia in a couple of weeks, we'll see.
It's interesting you're saying that, though, but in a lot of these places around the world, we've seen the strong man come back. The sort of like political strong man, authoritarianism has come back on the rise as well. The far right is coming up strong as well. That seems to appeal to a certain base and get elected. So how is that going against this?
Well, I think we're at potentially at a very interesting point, possibly a tipping point back the other way. And I think this election in Australia is going to be very interesting to see what the community really wants in terms of its leadership. Do they want what we've had, or do they want a change?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any scope for people like Clive Palmer, Scott Morrison, Bill Shorten to learn lessons from something like this? Should they be trying to be more like the women, or is it just people trust women more than they trust men at full stop?
Well, I think that there was another poll this week which looked at women and men, looking at who they trusted more to fix the sorts of issues around childcare, domestic violence, gender pay, gender equality, including things like superannuation. And overwhelmingly, that poll of both men and women said that they trust women to fix those things. And not just that, but that our current parliament is sexist.
Wow, okay.
I don't think there's too many people who would deny that. So it could be a very different election coming up if we'd had, say, Jay Bish and Tanya Plibersek as leaders.
Indeed.
Just throwing it out there. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Bit late now.
It's well and truly too late, isn't it? Bishop's leaving.
We're going to get what we get and not get upset, as my mum would say.